fasting from food for the sake of fasting from food, like you can talk about its health benefits, but like if it doesn't bring us in relationship with Jesus, it doesn't matter, right? But fasting is an opportunity to feel the hunger in my body so that God can come and fulfill my hunger in the deepest, in the deepest ways.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey.
Hey, I'm Father Mark Mary.
Hey, everybody. I'm Father Innocent.
Hey, I'm
Montgomery.
I'm Father PT.
And this is the Poco a Poco podcast.
Why that voice?
I don't know.
Oh, man.
Just a reminder, friends. This is not in reference to anything anyone has said. I don't know what that says. This is kind of our time to hang out together.
It's true. It's true. It is true.
So that's why it sometimes goes long and we enjoy it.
That's the experience.
And sometimes we don't enjoy it, but still we're here.
You said you're going to put that closer to you.
I know, but I would not. No, I would not do that though.
We miss Father Angelus. How about that? Still gone.
Do we? No, I'm kidding.
Still
Father Angelus,
gone. Still praying.
when you go back and listen to all these episodes, just know that I do miss you.
That's right. So, Father Innocent, I have a number of things that we could talk about. The first one, you're in the desert in Arizona.
Yep.
Backpacking for 21 days.
Yep.
That's it.
Sweet.
Is it going to be cold?
I know it's going to be a little different. It's about 70s during the day. We're in Southwest Arizona, so it could get down to the 30s and 40s at night.
It could.
Like it probably will. It'll be colder for sure. But because it's Southwest Arizona, I heard that's going to be different than Utah. So I'm struggling to trust that there's going to be enough difficulty because Utah is just really difficult because it's cold. Where now Arizona, if it's not as challenging or cold as at night, it just changes the game a little bit.
It's all Mai Tais and sunglasses during the days, out there tanning.
Tank tops.
Tank top, playing desert football, tackle in the sand. That's what my image is.
So that's real. So we'll see what that's like there. It is bone dry. They say there's no water. So we have to pretty consistently carry water. And they're like stationing out water sources for us, like in like these places. So that'll be hard because that's a significant added weight to already probably make a 65-pound bag or something. That's cool. And I don't know. This is a question I have, but I just wonder what the animal situation is going to be like. And because again, it doesn't get as cold and there's poisonous lizards. That's what I heard. Poisonous lizards. Wow. And I think there might be a snake situation. So I just do not like snakes.
Nice one.
I'm struggling with the snakes. Last night I'm laying in bed and I was like kind of half asleep and I had this like thought of like a snake in my sleeping bag in the desert. Like,
because they want to get to warm places.
They do. And
sleeping bag's warm.
Sleeping bag's a warm place.
Is it just you and Brother Matthew in a tent?
Yep. And so I did, when I thought about that, when we were doing tent arrangements, I thought about our many desert trips together and
your routine,
my routine, and like dance parties at night when Brother Colby would put his flashing headlamp on.
That'll be different. I think I look forward to seeing because God in the last few years that you've done it has like thrown a curveball.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Not a curveball, but a thing that makes it real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see what he does.
Hopefully, and hopefully this doesn't happen. Like there's no like poisonous snake or like that situation.
I'm hoping that. I'm hoping.
Do you know what core guys are going with you?
Yeah, one of the core guys is going is Andre. He's a good friend of the community and just a great man. The Fires know him, so he's great. He's the lead guy, and then another guy named Brandon, I think is his name. And so for any of the core people, I know Sarah. Sarah Karstrom listens to the podcast. She's like the overseer, kind of organizer. So, hi Sarah, we're excited about this.
So so I'm not going to say anything until you get back. I want to get in your head. So that's it.
So you're just bringing up something now
Gosh.
that you're not going
I
to
was
say.
gonna make jokes about things I'd like to have happen,
Oh,
but then
I
it's
see,
like
I
if
see.
it actually
I see.
happens,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it's
Yeah,
like
that's not-
okay. So the postulants are, first of all, okay, we got to step back.
Let's take a step back.
Okay, Father PT at the end of the last episode brought up people who are Team Socks. Have they actually seen it, or they've only heard it in principle?
I think they've only heard it. And like, so somebody said to me, like, I just like wearing socks around the house, right?
In the chapel, dude?
Yeah. I mean, it's how do I say this? Like, it's different. Not to say the chapel's not a sacred space and a sacred room, but like when you're in your house, like you live with Jesus.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and so there can be a greater freedom that somebody can feel, that especially since we have the tradition of taking off our sandals going into the chapel.
Yeah.
And you're wearing socks and you want to take your sandals off and going into the chapel. And so you do that.
Okay. You
Right.
eat chips in the chapel?
No, I don't. do
Chips
that.
in other place in the house?
I do. Yes. But is there a tradition of eating chips before going to the
No,
chapel?
I'm saying it's different. I'm saying it's not your. It's like it's in your friary,
Yeah.
but it's a sacred space. We do things different there.
But that's so wild to eat chips.
I'm just saying the distinction is okay. We do something different. It's
But
not
do we have a tradition of taking off our sandals? Yes or no? We do.
We
And
do.
Sometimes
Do we have a tradition of going barefoot or of taking off our sandals?
taking off our sandals.
I don't know if that's the tradition.
I don't know either. And so I'm just saying that I do think there is credence and space to allow people to wear socks. in
I'm
a
saying
Yeah,
we
I
do
agree.
that,
I agree with
but
you.
We should. Well,
I agree. Or we do it or we shouldn't do it. But what I'm most surprised oftentimes, like, oh, okay, so people have like different ways, and you're like, you feel guys like a little bit more traditional, like would go with the no socks thing, and you're like, whoa, he's in
sock camp.
He's in sock camp. I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm like shocked that this guy's in sock camp.
mystery of iniquity.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I've been interested. What is it called? Maybe shocked, surprised that like, okay, that guy's rocking the no shoes with socks and in the chapel when you would think he wouldn't.
If you were celebrating a wedding,
That's different.
would you go? Okay,
That's
tell
different.
me.
That's
Just because
that's a wedding
I
in a
don't-
church. That's
Yeah,
not in
but
a
we
chapel.
don't. I don't think we go
Fair enough.
barefoot. I don't think we go
Fair enough,
barefoot
fair
in
enough,
like
fair
in
enough.
public.
No, that
Only at our
and that
house,
actually
bro.
that bothers me. Where I've seen brothers and I have to talk to them about them, like at a parish mission, you're in a church and you're on the communion line and you see a brother go barefoot, like, hey, bro, because then like people get after mass, like it's a thing, it's distracting, right?
Yeah.
People are like,
and that's not the point.
yeah, people are like, hey, where's the guy's shoes? Do you guys need me to get him sandals? Like, I'm sorry, and so I've actually had these conversations, but yeah, it's just different in doing a wedding. I'm not gonna slide into. Yeah.
It's just
All I'm gonna say is this. This is the last thing I'll say about socks. No. Oh wait. Dang it! It worked in my mind. It doesn't work when I say it out loud. I'll say no socks, no shame. I was trying to make a
hate when that
slogan, but then that means I'm actually.
No, you
agreeing
actually
with
mean
no
socks.
Yeah, and that means socks, shame. So anyway. Oh dang.
it's true. There's not an explicit rule about it, but again,
Yeah.
we do have the use of reason and something that they call common sense, which is halfway common in our world.
And just to shout out somebody who probably doesn't listen to the podcast, my sister Mercedes will probably be in your camp. She's a Dominican. Remember sitting down with her?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so-
Every religious sister is going to be in my cap.
I don't know about every. I can
Okay, I
find.
don't
I'm
know
sure
about
there'd be
every.
one. You know.
No, I see. Oh, okay. I won't go.
Oh, but they no, because no,
You see sisters wear socks.
but
to the chapel?
they've been malinfluenced by us.
Oh man.
Because had a little slumber party in the chapel. We're all
Ain't
gonna
nobody
get
saying we're gonna have a slumber party in the chapel.
That's basically socks on the sand. Just socks. It's slumber
crazy.
party sleepover behavior.
That's crazy. So
Liturgy behavior.
maybe you want to have a sleepover because first of all, last episode you
What
brought up
happened?
the teddy bear. Now you talk about slumber party in the chapel. Like, come on, bro.
Bro, it's soft, man.
What is socks in the sand? Socks is soft.
The socks are soft
Okay,
on your
anyway.
feet and they keep you warm. That's a practical part of it too. This guy just said, let's turn up the heat to 64. That's crazy. You know
Well,
what I mean?
that's what we do.
No, but it's cold to say that in the wintertime. Obviously, you wear socks to keep your toes warm and just circulation, all these different things. But I just once again want to respect the fact of traditionally we take our shoes, our sandals off to go into the chapel. I happen to have socks on my feet. I'm not going to take my socks off to go in the chapel. I'm going to leave my socks on and go in the chapel.
Okay, I agree with you 1,000%. But this is where I should be the adult in the room. should really try to move us on.
Okay, great. But I will say is that this is clear evidence of someone who's not been on a desert experience with Father Innocent, who teaches you about praying and being cold.
Yeah.
We can bring about that next episode. But one last thing. One last thing is the Pashtuns are learning. This is what I actually wanted to talk about. The Pashtuns are learning how to like lead stuff, and I feel like I think like maybe having a 3 or 4 year old child is like one of like the best times because they're just kind of like fun and innocent and playful, and they can talk a little bit. I feel like Pashtuns learning the mass parts and how to lead stuff is like the best time because they're just learning and they're like really like they take it all serious, and it's just like
I appreciate you saying that. But it makes I get stressed out. So that's interesting.
They're not my kids. So.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like the 3 or 4 year old is like constantly, hey, put that down, do this, this and that. But then the fun uncle comes in like, hey, let's go hang out. You know?
And they're actually doing well. I mean, but they're really nervous, and it's like a thing, right? And the liturgy is like super important. Socks or no socks, super important.
Look, you brought it back there. We're moving on.
I know we're moving on. But it is so like in many ways I'm proud of them, but it also like stresses me out because you live with other guys and you have to like lead the liturgy, and so like if they do something wrong and then the guys get upset, the other guys get like annoyed or it's just like it's hard to. Well, yeah, it's not hard to encourage them, but it's like a thing. So we're just in that journey. They're taking over, and so. They're taking over cooking as well. So that's also like just kind of wondering like, wow, what's going on there? But
if anyone feels like they can, thank you for sharing. If anyone feels like they can contribute, they have something meaningful to contribute, you can go, there's this episode will be on YouTube and you can leave comments there about the socks. But they may not have the background even to understand the barefoot. So we'll take it with a grain of salt. No offense.
But
all right.
And at the end of the day, there are a lot of things happening in the world. This is just a fun conversation.
Correct.
I wouldn't say couldn't care less, but it's definitely at the bottom of the things I care about. But more so it's just because you're in a particular camp and I like
and
it
it's
myself.
fun to be dramatic.
So yeah. Because Captain, let's get to work here is kind of done with it.
He got corrected on his habit. His cincture length.
Oh, when did that happen?
I don't make the habits. I don't make the ropes.
When did this happen recently?
This guy's pro long cincture.
I'm a pro long cincture. I mean, not long cincture, but just not like mid calf or like mid thigh cincture.
Got shot down.
Wait, was this in novitiate or this is like recently?
Oh no, it was very recently.
Very recent.
And I agree with everything that was said. He's trying to troll me. And
you don't even know what that means. Dude.
I'm just like, I'm just not gonna go.
Like,
go
was this person's
here.
concern that your cincture's gonna get caught in the door, or is
no.
it aesthetics,
I mean, sometimes they like it. We got new rope. It like stretches out. What?
Can we grow up, man? Can we get to the serious?
Who is this guy?
No, but I agree. It was habit length and rope length.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that later, or not at all. Actually, it's
That's
fine.
wild. They think they mind in business.
Yeah.
Like, but if it's like for me, if it's a practical thing, like, hey, bro, I'm just concerned that your cincture's gonna get stuck in the door, or you could get whatever. Okay.
That was for the novices.
Okay.
It's just for the novices. Yeah. We'll just keep it there.
That's enough said.
Okay. Remember, for Lent's coming up. If you don't feel like you're already in the desert based off of listening to the beginning of this episode, we're going to be using the book Jesus and the Jubilee by Dr. Bergsma, which we and I apparently abiding together is doing the same thing because they are geniuses. And no one asked us to do this. This is just our own inspiration, apparently there. So we're going after it. Serious about the Jubilee.
Serious about the Jubilee. Awesome.
What else we're serious about is Lent.
We are.
We're more serious about the resurrection, just so we're all clear. But that's for another day.
Do you know what happened in heaven during the resurrection?
No.
No?
That didn't happen. No. There was not a golf clap, dude. There was not a golf clap.
Was it?
Closer. A lot of that.
I don't know what else.
Careful.
Yeah, that's all.
Just put it down, man. Just put it down.
I just having a lot of friend time, everybody. Just so you know, this is what's happening. Just enjoying it. So Lent is beginning the first weekend of March. And by first weekend, I mean always on Ash Wednesday. The furthest day from any weekend.
It's true.
And so we're going to before we get, because when Lent happens, we're going to be focused on the Jesus and Jubilee. So just a couple prep things for Lent in general. Particularly, we're going to talk about fasting.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be fasting from immaturity.
It's tough.
Fasting
Meaningless conversations, stupidity.
Father Innocent, allegedly, you know something about fasting. You teach people about it. What? Tell us something about fasting that might be helpful for the people of God.
Gosh. So I am very happy to lead this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But like with most conversations that I lead, I'm hoping to just like post some questions, give some insight, and then like try to cultivate something to talk about, because fasting is not, I think there's just a wide experience, wide range of things to talk about, to think about, to reflect on. So I have one particular way that like moves me to teach it and to talk about it. And I think it's helpful for young men who have entered religious life and to start learning about fasting and penance. So I feel like I don't have like a breadth of ways to think about it, but like just a really one way that I think is helpful and maybe predictable. Just the way that I kind of talk, or the way that I see things. So I think a really tricky thing, guys, that we have to be really careful of is when we talk about fasting and penance, it kind of automatically like puts us in this kind of a box of Christianity. I think fasting and penance are vitally important and like kind of, I think kind of at even like a, like essential to like the recipe of intimacy with God. But I do think they've been hijacked. Mm-hmm. And they've been hijacked by the culture. I think they've been hijacked by our own woundedness. I do think that it's misunderstood. And I know that can be kind of like bold, but that's why I just think it's super important conversation, because I think sometimes fasting and penance misunderstood or not engaged correctly can be an incredible distraction. And so that's why I feel pretty deeply, and I know it's bold, but I do think it's just really important to learn well and be formed well, so we can do it right and step into fasting and penance correctly. And it's not going to be a surprise, and I don't want to speak for us, but we talk about it on this podcast all the time that basically like it is all about relationship. It's all about intimacy. Like Jesus comes to us because he wants to restore our intimacy, our communion, and our connection with him. Right. And so like, I just, again, I'm kind of embarrassed because it's like, well, yeah, you guys talk about it all the time. Yeah. It's about relationship, and and so like, you're not going to be surprised when it's only in that context. We have to place fasting and penance directly in the context of what it means and the invitation to grow deeper in relationship with Jesus, more intimacy with him. And so that's the only way I can start this conversation, is like the why, the context is that it's fasting and penance, our on-ramps, our invitations to intimacy, to deeper intimacy. And in any other way we start to begin to understand this, it's difficult, because especially if we, in the beginning, we get sidetracked that we have to somehow perform, that we have to somehow do something to earn love, that it's like kind of the ascetical part of life is kind of what I do for God. And that it's kind of a way of life that kind of sets me, and we'll talk about next episode, like desert spirituality. Like if it's me focused or what I do, it can be really tricky. Because again, it's in that context of perfectionism and performing and thinking that I have to do something to be loved, or that I somehow that it's kind of some way of life that I have to put on and I have to make work so I can qualify myself or be good enough for God, or kind of somehow have a good Lent, right? And it's really difficult, guys, because this is the water we drink in Christianity. Is that it's like I have to just get like the program, or I got to find this system, or like formation programs or Lenten kind of observances. If I can just do these things, then like this will make me like more lovable, better Christian, or I can just like do Lent right, guys. And it just doesn't work. Like that's not what Jesus desires for us in that context only. And so I throw all that out because it's something we've talked about before, and the terms we used. Father Anzos has like a really beautiful way of like looking at all these things. So those should be things that we're used to talking about on this podcast. So guys, like if it's all about relationship, then the movement of fasting and penance is, okay, like how can I decrease so Jesus can increase? Like how can I say no to myself, and this could just be like simple like sacrifices, fasting. How do I kind of be intentional about ways where I can create space in my heart where there's less of me so Jesus can come and give himself to me, so that there's more sensitivity so I can receive intimacy. That was the scripture that came up in my heart for us today, is like, how can I decrease so that he can increase? And that's why it's directly connected to communion and to intimacy. And so how does that kind of practically work? When I introduce some fasting creates the emptiness. Fasting creates the space in us. So for instance, like concretely with food, like food, like fasting from food for the sake of fasting from food, like you can talk about its health benefits. You can talk about all different things that fasting's helpful for, but like if it doesn't bring us in relationship with Jesus, it doesn't matter, right? But fasting is an opportunity to feel the hunger in my body so that God can come and fulfill my hunger in the deepest, in the deepest ways, right? So I decrease in food, right? I allow I fast from food, whatever that would look like. Let's say like I skip, I'm just going to try to be practical as possible. Like I skip breakfast. So now there's this emptiness, there's this gap, and I'm hungry. But guys, it creates a physical space where my stomach is empty, but it also creates like a spiritual space right now that like, okay, I have chosen to make a decision to feel like a lack, to like say no to a comfort, to say no to feeling humanly satisfied. So now there's like a gap or a lack in me. And that's what I mean by like the decrease or the emptiness. And what's vitally important is what happens next. It's not just spiritual Olympics. Okay, I'm just going to do hard things. And I'm just going to do this and like, just get through this and kind of be the spiritual athlete and then like get through the day like this. No, what happens next is so important because I realize there's a lack. I realize I'm hungry. I realize my body's crying out for something. But now it becomes a place of connection where I can invite Jesus in to that place. Jesus, I experience hunger. I experience some sort of emptiness in my body. And I know that food cannot give me what I really desire. And so I'm going to make an act of faith and trust that I invite you to come with your presence, with your Holy Spirit. And this could be in the context of prayer in any capacity. I want you to come and fill this space. I want you to come and fill this void in me, this emptiness in me that I created with food. And I want you to come and remind me that it's only you that can satisfy. I have decreased, I have emptied myself, I have let go of human things to fill me, and I trust that in this moment you are going to come and fill me with yourself. So it's that move, right? It's I was talking to one of the postulants recently, and he's in his 30s and he's been fasting since he was like 18, seriously. And he's like, Father, I just wish someone would have taught me that early. I just thought it was like to conquer myself, to discipline myself. And he got how it kind of helps you spiritually. But very few, well, I don't want to like make myself singular because I think people are talking about it like this. But oftentimes we miss the intimate part, that it actually connects us with Jesus, that it's actually so it can be more of him. I can be more sensitive to him and I can notice these movements. It's just not about starving ourselves. It's not about just doing hard things. It's about the emptiness and lack in me when I am fasting and I believe, Jesus, you can come fill that space. And that changes me. He comes and something happens in the intimacy, but we have to decrease. We have to create a space or Jesus can't come give us more. So that's like the 101 class where I try to start the fasting penance conversation formation with the Pashtuns by saying it has to be about this exchange of intimacy. I'm going to let go of stuff so Jesus, you can come. And then we just kind of, I have a lot more to say, but like, then we kind of can take steps to recognize and try to stay focused in that rather than trying to just make it about like a spiritual Olympics of all these things we can do for Jesus with a disconnection from him.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I couldn't have said it better. But anyway, it's just funny. I wrote down a bunch of things and you started to just enumerate them. Like as far as the hijacked and yeah, just one of the things, I'll just say this. Oftentimes it's attractive to do programs. It's attractive to do things that other people are doing because that seems like the quick fix. But I think oftentimes, at least my experience, or at least, anyway, I'm just praying about things. Like Jesus places people before programs, right? It's not about this program that's going to save you, but it's people that are going to save you. And specifically, like the encounters that he has with people are what move them forward. Not to say that, anyway, I don't want to nuance things too much, but not to say that sometimes there are things that are good about certain programs, certain things. But once again, if it doesn't go down to the deepest place of, and am I encountering the Lord here, then we're missing something. And so I think the same thing too with fasting that you're just bringing up beautifully is just that it can't just be about not eating, not sleeping, whatever we choose as the particular penance to do or the thing to fast from. But it has to come to a place where like I'm experiencing the Lord in this place, in this lack, in this space that I've created because I'm not doing something. And just two passages came up. Specifically was Jesus fasting in the desert, right? It says here, after 40 days and 40 nights, afterwards he was hungry, right? And then the evil one tempts him. But because of the space, and I just imagine like him just being hungry, but even more so just being filled in with God and communing with the Father, it was just one of those things where he just stood up and like, no, I'm not going to go there, specifically to the tempter, right? Because I'm filled up with the Father, because they're all attacks against his sonship. And also too, just in Matthew 5, speaking specifically about concerning fasting. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by men, but by your Father who's in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And I think once again, this is a calling to a deeper interiority for our fasting, where it's not about the external things that you do, but it's more interiorly, where you're allowing the Father to see you in secret, to know like, God, this is tough. Like I'm really hungry right now, or I just need a couple extra hours of sleep, or whatever. Once again, it's the thing that we feel that pinch or that, anyway, there's difficulty in fasting from. The Father sees it. It's pleasing to him. And he will, if once again, we are encountering him, or at least speaking to him from the interior place of our hearts and explaining to him like how difficult this is, nobody else sees that exteriorly except the Father who sees it interiorly. And so he will bless us in that place and grant us deeper intimacy, or grant us the graces just to continue forward, or the graces that we're begging for, because he's just good and that's pleasing to him. And so,
yeah, Father PT, you're just right on it. It reminded me of something that, again, keeping Father Angelos alive here, but Father Angelos often talks about self-protecting, and he calls them, like he talks about protectors, right? And I think, guys, what fasting and penance in the most pure form go after our protectors. And so like eating and any type of comfort can keep us insulated, right? Like, and you don't even have to overeat, but I have nice things. I'm satisfied in my humanity. And guys, when we're going to go deeper in the spiritual life, being satisfied and being comfortable is a problem. But we don't like to feel uncomfortable, right? And so then we just grasp at more stuff, or grasp at more comfort, or dessert, or sugar, or these or nice things, right? Or we grasp at I don't like to be alone with my thoughts, or face my own heart, which we should have a deep reverence for. But what do I do with that? Is that I go after technology. I go after sports. I go after like these protectors or working out or success or like workaholism. I go after things that can protect me from my heart in the deepest places. And so it blocks my vulnerability, right? And we don't grow like that. And so what happens is with fasting and penance, we start to become vulnerable. I make my, like, think of how vulnerable Jesus was in the desert. I know we're going to talk about that later in the next episode, but think of how vulnerable Jesus was in his hunger. Think of how vulnerable with him was he was how vulnerable he was in his isolation, right? He left the world. He's in the desert. You feel the vulnerability. He has no one to protect him, but let's say the angels. But he did the penance, like of leaving stuff and distancing himself from other people, other things, and he allows himself to be vulnerable. And like Deacon Keating talks about this word, like he allows his heart to be dilated before the Lord and open and unprotected. And that's what fasting and penance does. So then Jesus, the Father, Our Lady, they can come and then they can give themselves to you in a really pure, sensitive, like raw kind of way, right? They don't have to worry about the walls and the self-protection. I mean, I just feel that deeply because we self-protect. We want to have even control. Like we want all these things that kind of numb like the deepest places, the pain, the insecurities, the fear, all the things Jesus wants to come in and heal. We self-protect. And I really think fasting from anything, from food, from technology, from noise. I think penance from the being able to like be disciplined in particular things that are penitential, that can really purify our hearts and walk us back from worldly things. It makes our hearts really pure and open and sensitive, but it doesn't feel good. It's difficult. And most people, including myself, we don't like that. And so then, and again, that's one way. And then the other way is that we just stay in the difficulty. We stay in like the program saves me. Like I'm just going to do all these hard programs. Like I'm gonna white knuckle it, and then that's also disconnected. So it's just holding that all together. But I feel pretty deeply about that.
I'm gonna see how this goes here. If they're, I do think for like a more beginner, the hardest thing or the harder thing is actually going to be the easier thing. What I mean by that is, particularly I think for young men, there's like a draw to these like kind of more extreme sort of corporal penances. But part of what makes it easier is it like feels there's like a lot of self-will and a lot of like I don't know what the word is, like affirmation that can come from doing the hard thing. Like it feels good as a young man and exciting to do the intense and the hard thing, and the exciting thing and the different thing. And that's just something I think like for whatever reason I'm particularly like weary of. It's like, yeah, we're gonna do all this sort of extreme stuff, but is that actually like God's will? Right. And is that actually the thing that's going to bring you to an experience of like intimacy and dependence on him? Maybe it is the next best step, but also there's like a humility of actually the thing that you think is super hard that you're going to do might actually be the thing you can do because it's actually the easier thing. That's why I'm not a good guys talk person. I'm like, rah, rah, rah. Okay, well, that's just sort of easy. Okay. And this is the second analogy. There's a thing about like with like working out and getting healthy where it's like, I think a phrase is like abs are made in the kitchen. Have you ever heard that before?
I have not.
Or six pack is made in the kitchen or whatever. The idea is like, okay, like the most important thing that's going to most affect your overall health and well-being and all that sort of stuff is actually like your diet on a regular basis, not what you do in the gym for 30 or 45 minutes. And where I want to go with that is it's like, if you have 7 hours of screen time, but during Lent you don't eat breakfast, if you're expecting some sort of breakthrough of intimacy, like that's not actually going to do it. It's like trying to get, you're doing your 30 minutes on the treadmill thinking you're going to have like a 6-pack while you just ate 24 donuts every day. That's a lot of donuts.
It's possible.
Too many donuts. But 8 hours of screen time is pretty close to 24 hours of donuts a day.
24 hours of donuts. What are we
man.
doing? Big Back University.
And so I do think that for the vast majority of normal people who are listening to this podcast, this is what I think, and you guys can correct it. The real place to focus for a fast for Lent is going to be looking dramatically at your consumption of entertainment and content and news and TV and music, right? It's we're talking about things that are bringing us to intimacy, creating space. I think that I mean, and then this is the hard part in saying it, is like, okay, I've heard it before. Okay, it's not exciting. Okay, like, but it's going to be like really hard. But I really think this is the place where most of us need to begin, because we're consuming this stuff to such a degree, like over the top. We really need to start taking like some serious steps back to create space for the Lord. And certainly a part of the desert experience, which we'll talk about again more next week, is a step back from a lot of this other stuff where we have control, where we keep sort of, what is the word, protectors.
Yeah.
So much of this is in that the consumption space.
Father, I agree with you 1,000%, and I feel the reason I feel deeply about it is because I actually experienced in my own heart that technology is just not neutral. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not neutral, so it has an effect, right? And one of the things that I think is like just super powerful, but also like I just really believe this deeply, that we're all made. Father PD was talking about like a deep interiority. I don't know if that was last episode or 5 minutes ago.
I always talk about that.
But we're all called to have such a deep interiority, and what that means is we are called to be men and women of prayer and deep intimacy. We're called to be contemplative, like no matter what you're called to, and we're we're called to have sensitive hearts towards God. And guys, like that's what's at stake when we allow, like, we just allow ourselves to be bombarded by technology or noise or meaningless noise. I mean, it may be any noise, but the idea is that like, I mean, let me just say meaningless noise, like, because I think the world is so loud, like it's not neutral. And what it affects is the capacity of our hearts to be moved and to be connected to God. Right. So I use the word sensitivity, like we want to be sensitive to his voice and to his movements and to his presence. And so that's what's beautiful in the invitation, whether it's a season of Lent or Advent or just maybe going deeper in our own lives right now. Like Jesus is coming after your heart. And so fasting and penance in this, within a really pure and even simple way, it recalibrates our hearts to be more sensitive to God and less sensitive to the world. Like, just to be, it's hard to explain, but it's like to be moved and to be opened. And like Jesus wants to speak to us and he wants to give himself to us. But if I'm full of the world and I'm distracted and I'm protected and I'm worried and anxious about many things, I think we miss him. And Jesus longs to give himself to us over and over. He longs to come. And so the gift of fasting and penance is that we deliberately and concretely make decisions to back away so our hearts can recalibrate, to back away so our hearts can be more human, and we can, in the silence and the prayer, like retrain our hearts to what God is doing. So we back away from technology, we back away from like comfort foods or just kind of like what we fill our hearts with. We back away from just from like busyness, like whatever, like we can just do so many things. But I think it just, what I really want to say is that it's a recalibration of the heart for God. But we don't do that. It's not neutral. It has an effect. And I've experienced that personally. Like when I'm so full or distracted or pulled into the world, I miss him.
I was just thinking as you're posing that question, maybe just putting it this way, like what prevents me from being with the Lord throughout the day? Right? Just looking at it that way. And and not like we have to be constantly thinking about him, but maybe just even imagining my day, like as Jesus sits with me, like if I sit on the screen for 7 hours, like what do you think the Lord would say about that? And especially if we are, and not if we are, we are called to a deep intimacy with him, and we are called to be just totally his. And not to say that you should totally abandon like social media or entertain all these different things, but can I comfortably say, hey Jesus, can you watch this movie with me? Or like, hey Jesus, can we do this thing together? And if it's a place of like, oh, I don't know if I actually want him to be in this space with me, okay, maybe we could start to pull back from those things. Or I don't know if we're so comfortable if I had a conversation with Jesus at the end of the day and said like, yeah, scrolling Instagram for 3 hours, you know, like whatever it is. So maybe approaching it that way, because we can, it not also too, this shouldn't be like a knee-jerk reaction, and we're not proposing this that you get rid of everything or all of a sudden things have to stop. But once again, this is expression, if nothing changes, nothing changes, right? There has to be some sort of desire for deeper intimacy, but also to take just difficult steps, because our hearts have grown accustomed sometimes just to that dull, anyway, the dulling way in which the internet or the different social media things can kind of dull our senses, our spiritual senses, to be sensitive to the things around us, specifically the Lord's heart or how he desires to move us. And so so just maybe asking that question, like, Lord, like what can I do with you? Or I'm inviting you to do these things with me, and I'm going to step away from the things that I don't feel like I can do with you, because that's obviously not a place where I want to be without you. But even more so, this is a practical change I can make specifically for intimacy and to gain your heart just more from me.
Father Mark Mary, appreciate your perspective on like just like kind of the giving the men's talk and that whole thing of like kind of motivation and appealing to guys' like desire to do hard things for love and things. The irony of is that has to be harnessed. Like that's actually like a good thing. And so when guys come into religious life, you don't want to be like, you just don't want, I think dads, particularly fathers, will harness that and bring it alive, but they direct it and shepherd it in the right way. Because there's so much fire and desire, like, so it's just ironic that it's like, it's actually a gift, but it's been malformed or deformed in our culture in so many different ways. And I have thoughts on that, but, so we can get that reharnessed. And so what's beautiful, and this is just super practical. And it's funny, I realize I'm saying this now, and there might be guys listening that are discerning because I don't necessarily tell the guys this, as we begin the fasting or in penance talk. But I wait for it. And guys, like we just have such an amazing group of men in our life, and they come, the guys discerning, but also the guys who join. And every man has always got there in this context of learning and teaching and over a period of time. But what I wait for is because they can only do limited things when they come, because they think like CFRs, we're just gonna, like super intense all the time, every day, all day,
Barefoot in the chapel.
Exactly. So they have these expectations. And so they come and think that it's going to be so hard, or they're like, Lent's going to be so hard. And like, we have a program and it ramps up over 2 years, and what guys can do, what guys can't do. And I always allow the way we start out is by saying like, guys, I want you to, after I give this whole teaching, making it about intimacy and relationship, less of me and more of Jesus. I just ask guys to pray about like just one personal offering to Jesus that you would like to give him, as we start out and then as we prepare for Advent and Lent. And it's always so beautiful that it seems at the beginning, it seems to be really personal. Like, this is what I want to do to offer Jesus. Great. Praise God. They start that. But what always happens is if we can keep Jesus at the center of every offering, of every penance and every fasting, if we keep Jesus at the center, there's always a time, like maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months in, where they have such a sincere and authentic desire to do more because they love him. And guys, it is a holy moment, because they're sitting in my office and they start somewhere like, Father, I know you told us not to worry about this and not wanting to do more, but like, I've just been overwhelmed by just going deeper with the Lord and experiences and love. And I just have this deep desire welling up in me to like give him more and to want to love him and to show him how much I love him more. And I'm like, okay, now we can really start talking about fasting and penance, because it's about love. and there's a sincere, authentic desire. Do they like do radically more? No, it's like we don't swing the other way. But that's what I wait for. And it's a really holy moment, because if we do this right, like it actually is built into us to want to love and to give ourselves. And the capacity in our hearts stretch out because we want to, like we'll start talk about in the desert, we want to do hard things for love. That's what, like it's built into us as men and women, but there's such a deep desire and it's so beautiful. And so that's what I wait for. And sometimes it takes longer in others, but it really begins to start making sense. And it formed God's will to walk the journey of fasting and penance when it's about love and Jesus is at the center. And then our hearts can be stretched out.
Yeah. And it's just a beautiful thing. Once again, obviously it sounds like you're moved by it or moved when that moment happens. But I think also too, it's just a beautiful thing just to recognize that in the other, there is this burning desire to give more, because right, we're being met with the heart, specifically Jesus's, that desires to give himself totally to us, right? And so it's not like it's not like the fasting and the penance is just going to open us up to this God who's somewhat indifferent towards us, or we have to do this because it's a church practice, but it's a heart that desires to give himself totally to you. It's a place where you will experience just peace, love, but more so than that, just the Lord almost is saying, like with your excitement, like, yes, like this is what I've been waiting for, like for your heart and just this unfiltered way of being with you. Because we don't have to look at those other things that you've placed aside, but I just want your heart as it is. And once again, the fasting exposes our hearts, or like the vulnerability that we spoke about, just creates this space for us to be, but more than creates a space, it just allows us to give our hearts totally as they are. And yeah, once again, just being met by a heart that is just totally inflamed in love for us, I think is a transformational thing. So.
Yeah, I guess I don't know that I have anything else to add. Do you have anything that's been left unsaid?
We'll talk about it next, but yeah, and you touched upon this a little bit, Father Innocent, but I think love begets more love, right? And love begets sacrifice, and yeah, but yeah, Jesus talks about this in John 15 something. No greater love has man than this, and lay down his life for his friends, right? And so it's a part of sacrifice, a part of fasting is to, okay, Lord, this is a big part of my life, or at least this is something I like to rest in that might not be you. And this is tough. But once again, knowing Jesus's heart for us, no greater love has one than to lay down their life for their friends. But I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to trust that this is going to open up into a space of intimacy and communion. And just to once again rest there, because we're pursuing one who loves us, and not in an indifferent way, but one who's passionate about us. And so, yeah, just to continue to step in that way, specifically with fasting, about the person as opposed to the particular practices.
Yeah, praise God. Yeah, PT, I was just going to say, like, just to make it personal, it has to, so that's just to make it really personal, especially this Lent, like, I would keep it simple, keep it like we don't have to do big things. But like if this has moved you to like just fast and do penance in a different way, a more personal way, just make something, like make this small offering to Jesus, and to have a cross or have a little icon that you see consistently throughout the day, that you see on your phone, whatever it is, but to keep the offering in front of you, like, Jesus, you have loved me and you've laid down your life for me. So like, this is my response in love for you. Like I empty myself, I let go, I do it, whatever it is. So keep it personal, keep it simple. And then also the other thing is, like, I think, just, I guess maybe it's going to repeat, but like, just to get a base hit, basically, like just to, because I think that's just important. Like, we're talking about big things and we've been at this for a while. So to get a base hit into, like for people who are married and people who like live in the world, like I guarantee you have a lot of fasting and penance already built in. So I don't know if you need to like look for other things, but like just ask Jesus for light and for to live in the present moment, because as a parent, you have countless opportunities to offer yourself, to lay down your life, to empty yourself, that I could decrease, that Jesus may increase in this, or my children or whatever. So ask for light to see those as opportunities, and just to like get a base hit there. Like, I'm just going to step into this in a new way. Getting up in the middle of the night, or the sacrifices you make constantly and over again in your children's lives, that has a capacity to make you really holy and to empty you of yourself. And Jesus is right there to like give himself to you. So it's already happening actually. And so to step into it in that capacity could be really holy.
Yeah. And I like that. And it's hard, but so pretend it's we got a baseball analogy, use base hit.
Okay.
All right. There's no whatever.
There's no I in team.
There's no I in team. There's no outs. The guy in front, you got a double. Like, I feel like there's a guy on second base, no outs. Yeah. I feel like a great penance is just a ground out to second base. You advance the runner. There's not like, it's whatever. I think probably on the stat sheet it's 0 for 1. But you come in and the boys in the dugout are gonna give you your respect, because they're like, we know what you did. I just feel like there's something about that, as opposed to like the home run or the guy who does whatever, that's probably where we want to be. But because it's just so like it's fantastic, it's hard to be there. But I like that. And I guess so. Like, what does that actually mean? It's probably like particularly maybe with corporal fasting and food or sleep, or your approach to being hot or cold. Like, we're not probably going for a big major thing in those areas. And if you are doing something, I don't know how maybe if you're doing something that's going to cut your calories and down by a lot, you got to talk to somebody before you do that. And if you've had a difficulty with relationship with food, just probably don't do that at all.
That's fair. Nothing to add.
Because we should have to be careful about like having somebody,
Absolutely. Maybe just to say too, it's just the vision of this is probably helpful that you have some sort of accountability, spiritual director, spiritual father, spiritual mother, or even just a group of friends.
Right.
Like there's people that it's just really helpful to like be with people in it, that we're not doing this kind of by ourselves. And we need wisdom.
But if you're 24, your person probably shouldn't be 25.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Good call.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
But also, it's not a guarantee that a 40-year-old's going to totally have a good sense of things. So just be...
Yeah, and I think just to both of your point, that I just want to encourage people to lean into the technology thing, right? To lean into that in the hours of screen time and things like that. That's just huge fasting and penance we could do to create this space. And that's not easy, and that's threatening to people. But I think it's super, and maybe to all of us in that sense of like, how much time do I spend in the world? And so just to be encouraged.
Yeah, and just to say, like, there's a reason it's probably not talked about in a lot. Like, so many of the saint writings and things like that are dealing with food in particular, food, almsgiving, etc. Is for the first 1,950 years, this wasn't like an issue for people in the church. This is a very like the idea of overconsumption of entertainment and content is a very new reality.
Yeah, and even from 1950 to now, it's very different.
Correct.
And so
even from 1990 to now is very different.
Wow.
Want to keep going?
No, I don't actually.
All right.
You looking at this for some sort of...
That was just the one I wanted.
Plates breaking.
Why did it take so long? Father Innocent.
Let's pray. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Jesus, we love you and adore you, and thank you for constantly pursuing us and inviting us deeper. We just pray for a new anointing on the experience of fasting and penance, that we could make it all about you, that we could make it all about intimacy, and that with great hope and trust that we just ask you for the next best step in this area, so that there could be less of ourselves and less of our pride and less of our ego, that it could, and just be more of you, more of your presence, more of your peace, more of your light and love. We thank you in advance for all that you're going to do during Lent to create a space for deeper intimacy. We ask this all through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Shout outs.
I'm actually good this episode.
I'm going to shout out to all the passionate moms and dads who listen, just because we're going to be talking about them. So,
Shout out to Luke and Sam Benzinger.
gosh,
Hey.
the Benzingers.
The boys. Good hanging out with you guys.
Remember there was like a competition who they like better?
Me.
Peace.
Poco a poco vamos a llegar. Somos peregrinos, and you know that's who we are. We make our way. Hey, hey. Little by little, we learn a little more each day that God is love, that life is short, that all will be well. And I know